Though it might seem like ninjas have always been an integral part of pop culture, they weren't always so popular. To be honest, stuff like ninjas was actually kind of taboo in Western markets like Europe. It was only after the success of iconic franchises like Ninja Gaiden that these stealthy heroes saw an unprecedented surge in popularity, and even today, it's easy to see why this game is admired to such a high degree. Set in a retro-futuristic version of 1988,
this is the story of Ryu Hayabusa,
a ninja on the violent path towards avenging his father. Over the years, Ninja Gaiden has grown from a game into something of a phenomenon, and thus we decided to explore this franchise in this marvelous video. And what better place to start this journey than with an in-depth analysis of Ninja Gaiden's protagonist,
Ryu Hayabusa.
But before the shurikens start flying, please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It might be just a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. Now, put on your masks and grab your blades, because here we go. The Dragon Lineage. In order to truly understand Ryu as a character, it's important to take a look at his background. And, well, the Ninja Gaiden lore runs pretty deep. It all began in a prehistoric era when 13 legendary dragon lords waged a terrible war against a collection of evil deities. This war lasted many, many years and ended only when the first sparks of human life began to appear on planet Earth. Fortunately, the evil deities were soundly defeated, which brought about an era of peace in which humans and dragons lived in complete harmony. But as we all know by now, peace never lasts. The youngest of the dragon deities, the 13 dragon, was corrupted by the evil deity's influence. Soon, he developed a great jealousy regarding his siblings, which led him down the path of betrayal. Eventually, he was able to tap all of their strength and became the Dark Dragon, wasting no time in plunging the Earth into a state of chaos and confusion. This would become the reason behind the return of the evil deities from the underworld. These dark beings mixed their bloodlines with that of the ancient human tribes, making them susceptible to curses. The 13 dragon gods, who were dying at a surprising pace, were forced to place their spirits and remaining strength into one of their fangs. This was done in the hopes of passing on their power to a capable warrior. This fang would become known as the Dragon Sword, and the chosen warrior would be able to use it to slay the Dark Dragon. The sword would become a family heirloom and was passed through the generations, with their bloodline gaining recognition as the Dragon Lineage. But as we already stated, peace can only be temporary, and the evil deities will end up rising once again. They would raise armies of fiends, but they were also aware of the astonishing power contained within the dragon's sword. Thus, they fashioned a sister blade for themselves from the bones of the Dark Dragon. The Dark Dragon blade contained the swords of all the black dragons and was inherently evil. Thus, the nefarious deities were able to match the power of the dragon's sword. The evil gods and their minions descended upon the dragon lineage but were defeated yet again. In this way, the Dark Dragon blade passed into the hands of the dragon lineage. Sometime later, the Vazda sect, another pantheon of evil deities, would take over and enslave all of humanity. This would call forth a new dragon lineage warrior known as the Dragon Ninja to rise as liberator. After a brutal conflict, the ninja succeeded in sealing away the sect's omnipotent deity into an eternal slumber by binding him with a demon statue. It's believed that every generation of dragon lineage warriors is destined to deal with the supernatural threats of their time. However, with time, the supernatural dragon weapons were reduced to religious relics, and very few individuals realized the true extent of their divine power.
The Hayabusa clan, to which Ryu belongs, is a part of the dragon lineage, with Joe Hayabusa
and his son Ryu standing as the last known dragon ninja on Earth.
Ryu Hayabusa's early life.
With a family like that, it was only natural for Ryu to become part of the dragon lineage's legacy from an incredibly early age. From the very beginning, he was taught to follow the path of the ninja, even in the face of unparalleled dangers, pain, and sorrow. He grew up under the watchful eye of the archer Omitsu,
the Hayabusa village, and was taught many vital
skills to survive as a ninja as a child. He would develop a great friendship with the first Dragon Shrine maiden, Kuriha. His arduous training turned him into an extremely capable warrior, and Ryu grew even more intense as he grew into a young man. Despite this, Ryu quickly surpassed the rest of his peers and was recognized as one of the most competent warriors in his entire clan. With time, his skill grew to such an extent that he earned the right
to bear the name Hayabusa as his own,
mastering even advanced ninja techniques. Over the years, Ryu also befriended a bunch of other clan members like the veteran Genjiro, Kuriha's younger sister Momji, and his maternal uncle Murai, who eventually left the clan under mysterious circumstances. Murai would also go on to establish his own rogue ninja clan, but that's a story for another time. Ryu was also able to establish a relationship with ninja from the significantly larger ninja clan known as the Mugen Tenshin. He was especially close to Hayate, the heir to the larger clan, and would even vow to protect Hayate's sister Kasumi even in the worst of circumstances. From a very early age, Ryu began showing the signs of a hero and a leader, and these qualities would only grow more prominent over the course of Ninja Gaiden. Now that we've grown familiar with Ryu's history and childhood, let's take a closer look at the early battles in his career. The Ninja Gaiden Saga Early Battles. Let's begin this journey with Ryu's fight against the cult of Nostradamus, a storyline featured in the Ninja Gaiden arcade game. In the year 1999, the cult of Nostradamus, led by his descendant, Bladeadamus, rose from relative obscurity with a purpose: to fulfill Nostradamus' prophecy by bringing about the rise of a Devil King who could start the apocalypse. Ryu's father was already familiar with the Devil King, known as Jakio, and knew that this prophecy was way more than the cult's delusion. He donned his red ninja gi and stepped out to stop the cult. Ryu also accompanied his father, eager to prove his own prowess as a ninja. Soon, the father and son made their way to America, where the cult gained prominence. They arrived in San Francisco, where the two ninjas were greeted by multiple members of the cult who donned white masks and seemed ready to stop them. Our heroes would employ non-lethal hand-to-hand combat in order to get through the hundreds of cult members in their way. These cultists were even joined by other fighters like street gang members, acrobats with claws, road warriors, evil ninjas, and even sumo wrestlers. However, the father-son duo would successfully get through these challenges and find their way to New Jersey, Las Vegas, and the Grand Canyon, exploring the American wilderness before eventually reaching the cult's headquarters. The battle would get increasingly violent as they reached the last stages of their journey, and Ryu managed to eliminate hundreds of cult members single-handedly. Inside the headquarters, the ninja warriors would find numerous demonic artifacts, and a brutal battle would unfold between the ninjas and Bladeadamus. The conflict would only end with the cult leader eliminated, following which the successful
Hayabusa ninja would return home to Japan.
The storyline, known as the dictatorship of Emperor Garuda, was first depicted in Ninja Gaiden's Shadow. It takes place a full year after the conflict with the cult of Nostradamus and begins with a dictator known as Emperor Garuda capturing New York City thanks to his evil army. Ryu would take it upon himself to get rid of this dictator and would begin a war in the skyscrapers armed with just a grappling hook and katana. Scaling one skyscraper after another, he would take on multiple robots until he managed to defeat their leader, the cyborg Spider. He would then continue his search of the city only to find the kickboxing champion Gregory and his manager standing in the way. After defeating these minions, Ryu began facing Garuda's military and was able to easily eliminate them, including their leader, Colonel Allen. As Garuda grew increasingly desperate, he unleashed his own ninja upon Ryu, but as you can probably guess by now, they were pretty ineffective. He quickly made his way through tons of deadly traps to face the master ninja named Nobleman Fukisai. Though this was one of the toughest battles Ryu had faced, he finally managed to get rid of the levitating ninja. During the final showdown with Garuda, Ryu found himself going up against the former's magical abilities, which included lethal bolts that fired from his hands. As Garuda found himself on the verge of defeat, he transformed into a deadly bimetallic being, but even this transformation wasn't enough to stop Ryu from killing him. The Modern Ninja Gaiden Timeline. The Modern Ninja Gaiden storyline begins with the Dark Dragon Blade incident, which is depicted in Ninja Gaiden Sigma and Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword. Here, we see an older Ryu being entrusted with his family's dragon sword, while his father underwent special training in the sacred wilderness. Ryu eventually receives a message inviting him to visit his uncle in the Shadow Clan Ninja Fortress for special training. Ryu ends up accepting this invitation and heads down the path of the ninja on an autumn afternoon. However, before he can make it to the Ninja Fortress, he's ambushed by members of the Shadow Ninja clan. Here, we receive more proof that the path of a ninja is indeed merciless and cruel, as Ryu learns that he must slay Morai's ninja or be killed himself. He manages to annihilate Morai's focus and even gets past the traps installed on the floors and various other obstacles. He eventually makes his way to Morai as the sun sets, and the two expert ninjas indulge in a lethal battle before sitting down together for some tea and conversation. I guess that might seem anticlimactic, but soon Ayane interrupts the conversation to inform the two ninja that
beloved Hayabusa village is burning.
Ryu rushes back to the village as soon as he can, but is greeted by hellish samurai warriors and mages who have descended upon the village. A bunch of his brethren are already dead, and in a state of anger, he starts taking on the ruthless samurai. He finds his way to the center of the village where he attempts to save his best friend, Kureha, but his efforts are in vain. He's forced to watch as she's killed right in front of his eyes. The man responsible is the greater fiend Doku, who then continues his rampage by beheading senior
Hayabusa ninja with his dark dragon blade.
Ryu and Doku face off against each other, but our hero finds himself overwhelmed by the greater fiend's might, which has been further enhanced by the blade. Doku manages to deliver a powerful strike that cuts through Ryu's shoulder. Barely able to keep his body together, Ryu stumbles to the ground and almost dies, but a few hours after the fight,
The Hayabusa animal spirit,
peregrine falcon, appears above Ryu's body. His spirit's powers allow Ryu to heal himself, and he makes a full recovery in just 3 weeks. Murai eventually informs him of the real mastermind behind the attack. This is when Ryu dons the legendary Black Falcon attire for the first time and begins making his way towards an isolated nation in Asia known as the Holy Vigor Empire. The nation is incredibly well protected, and there seem to be surprisingly few ways of entering. Ryu finds that one of the only accessible routes involves taking a zeppelin, and he ends up boarding one. However, his way is blocked by Vigorian special forces who perceive Ryu as a threat. They break into his room, but Ryu manages to overpower them with ease. After wiping out the whole squad, he takes on their leader, General Dynamo, on top of the zeppelin, where Ryu is able to wound the general and damage his power suit enough for it to explode. The zeppelin ends up crashing, but Ryu reaches the capital city of Tyron by taking advantage of the Dark Night. Once in Tyron, Ryu continues annihilating countless Special Forces agents before reaching the locations like Muramasa's shop and Han's bar. At the bar, Ryu meets Rachel, a fiend hunter, and they have a brief conversation. As Ryu heads deeper into the enemy's lair, he encounters the Black Spider Ninja, and Ryu ends up eliminating his forces pretty quickly. He then makes his way to the monastery, where he encounters the Gala Fiends for the first time and slays them all, while Rachel is watching. Unfortunately, a larger fiend, the Hydracubus, grabs hold of Rachel and then consumes her, but Ryu manages to save the hunter by quickly dispatching the fiend. Then, Ayane appears in front of our hero and warns him that the Dark Dragon Blade's power is constantly increasing. This causes fiends to appear, and Rachel confirms this by explaining the stirring of her fiendish bloodline. Rachel also tells Ryu about a secret underground path that leads directly to the Emperor's palace, where Doku would undoubtedly be present. While getting through the monastery, Ryu slays many more fiends, encountering even more powerful versions like the Shadow, Monk, and Bast fiends. He finds the entrance to a deep underground cavern where he discovers a cemetery. After battling some fiends, Ryu accidentally reanimates hundreds of zombies known as ghouls, and he ends up getting fiend blood into the Holy Grail. Despite this, he loots the relic and keeps battling his way through hordes of ghouls to make his way into the upper levels of the cavern. Here, the Holy Grail comes in handy as Ryu uses it to reanimate a large bone dragon whose skeleton immediately tries to gobble him up, but Ryu injures the dragon's limbs and causes it to fall to the bottom of the cavern, its gargantuan body hitting the ground with such force that it reveals another hidden section in the cavern. However, underground water starts to seep into the chamber. Despite this, Ryu continues to travel further until he comes upon an Egyptian tomb full of ghouls. After another battle against the undead minions, Ryu reaches a cavernous tunnel where the bone dragon's skeleton has collapsed. The whole area is completely flooded, and water carries Ryu into another section of the cavern, which has an elevator. The elevator takes Ryu back to the monastery, where he fights the greater fiend Alma, but their fight attracts the attention of the Vigorian army. With the military hot on his trail, Ryu decides to strike at the main military base intruder to disable the Vigorian forces. He kills all the soldiers in his way and even destroys their mech infantry. He's able to get into the supply base by nightfall, and here he takes on another horde of soldiers, robots, tanks, and helicopters, proving that there's literally nothing that can stand in his way. He eventually destroys the base's radio tower, disabling the whole organization. As the military collapses, Ryu continues tracking Doku and the Dark Blade. In an attempt to find the underground path, Ryu enters the sewers of Tyron and finds that all the aqueducts beneath the city are completely infested with more fiends. He reaches the end of the tunnel only to find the wind demon Pazu standing in his way. He fights his way through the demon and enters the moat that surrounds the gated Zarkon. Though navigating through the moat poses a significant challenge, Ryu ends up in the underground passage again, where he discovers a working elevator leading to the Colosseum. Here, he finally meets his enemy Doku, who has Rachel in his grasp. The two warriors take each other on once again, but the results are drastically different. Ryu stands victorious, but as Doku dies, he informs Ryu that the Dark Dragon Blade is in the Emperor's possession. He also warns our hero that an awakening will warp the very fabric of reality into a nightmare. Rachel and Ryu part ways after this fight, and the valiant ninja continues down his path of violence. Ryu's journey then takes him to the caverns under Zarkon's place. Here, Ryu encounters a cavern of ice while fighting countless fiends and even the deadly Gobdeck. At the end of the ice caverns, Ryu slays a large ice beast known as the Jotunfrau. He then starts towards the fire caverns, which are filled to the brim with especially fiery fiends. After slaying these monsters, he begins finding his way through the lava-filled caverns and manages to reach the end where a fire dragon is waiting for him. He carves up the dragon and proceeds further into the caverns, only to find himself in the familiar aqueducts one more time. He rises back to the streets of Tyron, but the sheer number of fiends present in the streets makes it evident that the awakening is upon them. He reaches Muramasa's shop, where he learns that the dragon sword is no match for the dark dragon blade, and a special jewel is required to complete the weapon. Thus, Ryu continues collecting stone tablets throughout his journey and places them on the twin serpent statue that marks the entrance to the city. These mystical artifacts activate numerous portals around the world, and Ryu is suddenly pulled through one of them. He finds himself back
in Hayabusa village,
pays a short visit to Kuriha's gravesite, and discovers the Eye of the Dragon jewel on her tomb. This happens to be the same magical jewel that is required to complete the dragon sword, and thus he unlocks the true potential of his weapon. Ryu also catches a glimpse of the Vigurian Emperor, who has managed to unseal the dark dragon blade by infusing it with the powers of all the evil deities. This action transformed the human emperor into a supreme deity, causing reality to warp. As the fiends return in greater numbers, Ryu begins to hop from one portal to the next, finally ending in an open field where a Mayan pyramid can be seen. On the very top of this pyramid, constrained by heavy chains, Rachel is being held by Spirit Doku, who seems to be in the middle of the awakening ritual. Ryu runs across the fields towards them, but Alma, empowered by Vigor's return, begins to attack him. She falls in front of the true dragon sword, and Ryu begins making his way towards Doku. Though Doku is just moments away from killing Rachel, Alma puts herself in front of Doku's blade, saving her sister and reverting back to her human form. The human world suffers greatly due to the fiends, and thus Ryu wastes no time in attacking Vigor. The evil emperor returns to his labyrinth, which is infested with monsters like ghostfish and Ariox, but these pose no threat to our powerful ninja. At the end of the labyrinth, Ryu encounters Doku in his spirit form and manages to defeat him in combat for a second time. But in his final moments, Doku places the fiendish curse on Ryu, transforming the valiant hero into a fiend. However, Ryu's will and determination keep him from giving in to the fiend's corruption, and he manages to retain his soul and mind. Moreover, he also gains the powers of a fiend. He then starts heading down a path that leads straight into Zakon's palace. After getting into the building, Ryu realizes that the laws of physics don't apply here, and that reality has changed to such a degree that it simply could not be comprehended by the human mind. Heading deeper into the palace's core, Ryu encounters some of the toughest fiends we've ever seen, and even has to enter the underworld to defeat Marbus. Ryu enters the strange realm and emerges into a strange field of flowers where the Vigor Emperor has been reborn as a divine entity. The dark dragon blade now lies on top of him, and the heavenly fields soon give way to a hellish fiery pit. After a final confrontation, Ryu slays the Emperor, but the man just rises again, this time in the form of a magma demon. With a devastating blow, Ryu finally manages to emerge as the victor. With the Emperor dead, the curse on Ryu is lifted, and he even retrieves the dark dragon blade. Rachel calls out to him from the upper levels of the magma cave, and Ryu is able to exit with her as the cave collapses. But in those desperate moments, the dark dragon blade falls out of Ryu's hands and lands on Murai. It is revealed that Murai's been waiting for this moment all along, and he takes the power of the dark dragon sword for himself. It transforms him into death incarnate and leads to a brutal battle between Ryu and Murai. After defeating him, Ryu uses the true dragon blade to destroy its dark counterpart. In the final moments of this story, Ryu is seen returning the Eye of the Dragon to Kuriha's grave. The Dark Dragonstone storyline, appearing in Ninja Gaiden Dragon Sword, begins 6 months after the reconstruction of
Hayabusa village.
We find Ryu in the Forest of Shadows, where he's busy training his protege, Momiji. The two ninjas spar, and Momiji tells Ryu to head back to the village as they have to collect sakura flowers for Kuriha's grave. Just as they're returning after collecting the flowers, the Black Spider Ninja descends into the forest and strikes at the
Hayabusa village.
Ryu reaches his village and finds his clan members under attack. He rushes to help the villagers while Momiji manages to square off against the Black Spider Ninja. However, Ryu's young protege is easily overpowered and captured by the Red Worm. Though Ryu succeeds in slaying both the Black Spider Ninja and the Red Worm, Momiji slips out of his grasp. Ryu begins investigating, as he's hell-bent on not losing Momiji the same way he had once lost Kuriha. He sets out to find her and displays a new skill, the art of Inazuma, which is powerful enough to destroy a boulder that hides the portal from which the enemies had emerged. He finds himself in the familiar monastery in Tyron, where everything seems to have been rebuilt. Ryu slaughters a bunch of fiends, only to realize that this is all merely an illusion. Ryu then makes his way through a portal to the Stone Circle Cover, a realm where one can find many portals. Ryu uses one of these to return
Hayabusa.
After returning to the village, Ryu sees Muramasa, who explains that the stone that created the illusion was one of the Dark Dragon stones that had been formed after the Dark Dragon was killed. Each of these stones contains the essence of the god, and if they were united, the Dark Dragon would return and destroy the world. Each of these stones also seems to call out to the other and would even shine brighter as they got closer to each other. Thus, Ryu begins to follow the stone in order to find Momiji. He heads back to the realm of the portals and follows the aqueducts in order to gain access to the underground sanctuary. Here, he discovers that the Dark Dragon Stone has powers of resurrection as it brings the wind demon Pazu back to life. The ninja faces off against his old enemy yet again and collects the Dark Dragon Stone of Strength after defeating him.
He returns to the Hayabusa village once again,
only to find it under attack in his absence. The Black Spider ninja in charge of the attack falls quickly in front of Ryu's might, but Sakura is unfortunately kidnapped. I guess all ninja shows have to have a stupid character named Sakura. It's just a rule. The kidnappers offer to free Sakura in exchange for the Dragon Sword, but Sanji distracts the attackers just in time for Ryu to quickly eliminate his enemies. He then continues his quest to find Momiji, which leads him to the underground mausoleum where he fights zombie ghouls once again. At the end of it, Ryu has to take on a large golem-like creature who holds the Dark Dragon Stone of Slumber. Next to it, Ryu finds more stones that lead him to the underground Colosseum where he finds a very familiar foe. The spectral version of Doku vows revenge against Ryu, and despite Doku's badness, Ryu is able to defeat him pretty quickly. After the fight, Ryu gains the Dark Dragon Stone of Spirits. He returns to the Magma Caverns where he takes on the Dark Dragon Stone of Fire, and then to the Ice Cavern where he receives the Dark Dragon Stone of Ice. The Dragon Stones then lead Ryu to the Isle of Destiny, a place with strange tropical islands and jungles. On the island, he discovers even more demonic versions of the Black Spider Ninja and Ghost Fish on the beaches. At the end of it all is an elder sorceress called Obaba. After Ryu defeats her, she reveals that Momiji is with Ishtaros. The next leg of Ryu's journey takes him to the same pyramid where he had saved Rachel 6 months prior. I guess the place is pretty popular among kidnappers or something. Ryu fights the deadly berserker fiends and kills a Resetsu-like creature to gain Serpent's Dark Dragon Stone. When he returns to his own village, Denroku and Hanamaru give Ryu explosive arrows to add to his arsenal. With only one Dragon Stone left, Ryu heads straight to the underworld, where he finds Momiji. She's being held by the ancient fiend sisters, Ishtaros and Nichai, who might just be the most powerful foes he's ever faced. Ishtaros uses her telekinetic abilities to pull all the Dark Dragon Stones from Ryu, which makes her unbelievably powerful. Though she manages to hand Ryu a sound defeat in combat, Ryu's old friend Koriha comes to his rescue. Koriha's spirit uses Momiji to infuse the eye of the dragon, returning it to Ryu's dragon sword. Armed once again with the true dragon sword, Ryu defeats Ishtaros with ease. Nichai attempts to resurrect Vigur, but Ryu makes short work of the fallen emperor, who's especially skeletal this time around. Nichai is also slain after a short battle with Ryu. However, before Ryu can return home, the Dark Dragon rises and Ryu faces his toughest battle. The colossal deity strikes at the ninja, but Ryu uses his true dragon blade to slay the evil entity. In the end, he's able to return to
Hayabusa village with his beloved protege,
Momiji. The next storyline is known as the Vampire War, where we see Ryu battling a vampire known as Crimson alongside his father. We learn that the ninjas of the dragon lineage have been waging a constant war against the bloodthirsty creatures for thousands of years, and an end is finally at hand. During the battle, Ryu throws the poor vampire into a building so hard that the structure literally collapses on top of him. Crimson manages to survive this attack and responds with a sonic blast. This causes Joe to put his only son out of the way in order to face the attack himself. Fortunately, Joe has the Eye of the Dragon on him, and this keeps him from sustaining any major injuries. The light from the jewel weakens Crimson to such a degree that Ryu is able to cut the fiend down in a matter of moments. The two ninjas return home as the sun rises, but another adventure seems to await Ryu. While Joe is healing from his wound, Momiji reveals that the Black Spider Ninja is planning to invade Tokyo. Leaving Momiji in charge of the village, Ryu returns to Tokyo to investigate. After spying on the Black Spider Ninja in Tokyo for a while, he begins to uncover their true motives. At Muramasa's new shop in Tokyo, the Black Spider Ninja abducts a woman and is just about to finish her off when Ryu decides to show himself. He kills one of the attackers with a well-placed shuriken and uses his sword to slice the other guys in half. Soon, more Black Spider Ninjas emerge and try to ambush Ryu as he's making his way through the city. After eliminating multiple waves of the Black Spider Ninjas, Ryu captures the woman from the top of the building and notices another woman interrogating her. Ryu decides to crash their party and drops in through the glass window. He kills fiends and Rasetsu Ninja while making his way to the top of the tower. The mysterious woman seems to be getting away with her captive when Ryu throws a shuriken at the helicopter, forcing the villain to release her victim. It turns out that the woman Ryu rescued is actually a CIA agent named Sonya who's been looking for him all around. She warns the ninja about a secret plot to resurrect the Archfiend and an impending attack on the village. For the second time in this franchise, Ryu rushes back home to find his village completely decimated. He has to fight through countless ninja warriors and mage intruders to get into the castle of the dragon. He works his way to the top where his wounded father is taking on the Black Spider Clan's leader, Genshin. Just as Ryu makes it to the scene, Joe is knocked down while the mysterious woman from Tokyo, called Elizabeth, steals their clan's demon statue. Ryu engages Genshin in a deadly battle, but the ninja seems too powerful for Ryu. But just as Ryu is about to be defeated, Joe rises and takes on Genshin once more. Joe orders Ryu to get the demon statue from Elizabeth, and the obedient son reluctantly agrees. He follows the mysterious woman to New York City, which has been completely consumed by fiends. Their leader is the greater fiend Alexit, and his awakening seems to be part of Elizabeth's evil plan. Ryu takes on hordes of fiends as he works his way through the city. His journey leads him through the subways and sewers, finally leading him to the monstrous Gigadeath. Despite the fiend's power, Ryu is able to eliminate him by just using a stab and slice. Ryu heads back to the surface where he fights giant trolls before boarding a helicopter being piloted by none other than Sonya. She drops him off at the Statue of Liberty where Ryu takes on yet another legion of ninjas, fiends, and demons. Ryu finally encounters Alexi, a particularly detestable individual who thinks of humans as flies. Though Alexi is an incredibly powerful villain, Ryu is able to kill him. Ryu continues to follow Elizabeth, who takes him to the Aqua City in Italy, which is infested with Gaja and werewolves. Ryu takes a trip through all the canals and the waterway systems in the city, eventually chancing upon an ancient Rin submerged underwater. Here, he slays a large monster that resembles the Loch Ness monster by slitting its throat vertically and impaling its head. On his way out, he winds up in a bone pit underneath the lycanthrope's castle, where he has to defend himself from a number of skeletal creatures. After slaying many werewolves, he finally encounters their leader, Wolf, who is also the greater fiend of the storms. They indulge in an extremely bloody fight inside the ancient Colosseum, with Ryu just managing to kill the deadly beast. After he gets rid of the rest of the werewolf minions, Sonya arrives to take him to his next destination. Their helicopter catches up to the Daedalus, a large flying fortress that's under the control of the Black Spider Ninja. Ryu infiltrates the ship, which is being guarded by ninjas carrying automatic weapons, high-tech gear, mech suits, and robots. He sabotages the airship on his way to Elizabeth, but Genshin stands in his way once more. The two ninjas fight inside the ship's humongous cargo bay, and as a result, the Daedalus breaks into two. As the ship plunges out of the sky, Ryu and Sonya grab the nearest motorcycle and escape just seconds before the ship hits the ground. Next, Ryu finds himself facing a large nuclear armadillo fiend whom he impales with his sword, causing the creature's brains to spill out. Ryu heads into Moscow, which has been decimated by Zidonius and his army of Black Spider ninjas. Zidonius is also the greater fiend of flames, which makes him especially dangerous, but come on, you already know that Ryu's gonna win. Ryu ends up in the Amazon rainforest and fights more monstrous creatures. Deep inside the jungle, Ryu finds an underground tunnel where he slays a gigantic worm before continuing on his quest to find Elizabeth. In order to slow Ryu down, Elizabeth summons two legendary Quetzalcoatl, and the serpentine creatures waste no time in attacking him. Despite the danger posed by these monsters, Ryu takes them on all alone and manages to win. Elizabeth then uses the demon statue to enter the Temple of Sacrifice, which causes blood to rain down from the sky. Ryu continues navigating through the caverns, where he's attacked by yet another Quetzalcoatl. After defeating the monster, he finally reaches the temple's interior, where he confronts Elizabeth. She reveals herself to be the greater fiend and ruler of blood, finally explaining the blood rain outside. She begins taunting Ryu as the demon statue has already made it into the hands of the infernal high priest, which means that the archfiend's resurrection is already set in motion. Though Ryu defeats Elizabeth in battle, he knows that he must now head to Mount Fuji, where the final battle will take place. He returns to
The Hayabusa village,
where Ayane presents him with the Eye of the Dragon. Armed with the true dragon sword, he begins slicing his way through waves of Black Spider Ninja and works his way through the Shadow Ninja Fortress. After ascending Mount Fuji, Muramasa Hayabasa offers Ryu a pep talk, and our hero finally arrives at the Black Spider Graveyard. Here, he has his final battle with Genshin. The battle is incredibly brutal and difficult, but Ryu is victorious in the end. He then makes his way towards the mountain and tries to access the underworld. Upon entering this realm, he finds himself facing Marbus once again. He also takes on the 4 greater fiends once more and even manages to rescue Sonya from Alexi's grasp. He eventually finds himself in the Hall of Blood fighting Genshin in his fiend form. Despite the transformation, Ryu is able to defeat his foe once again, and the 2 ninjas have a moment of understanding before Genshin passes. Before dying, Genshin passes the sacred blade of the Archfiend to Ryu. With his new weapon, Ryu eliminates waves of enemies and arrives at the site of the revival. He interrupts the ritual and swiftly defeats the High Priest Dagradai. Seeing no other way, Dagradai sacrifices himself and accelerates the awakening of the Archfiend Vazda. Ryu fights against the massive deity and tries to prevent it from escaping through the summit of Mount Fuji. Sonya appears and the two begin to find an escape, but in the chaos, a single drop of Ryu's blood falls on the dead Archfiend. With this, Vazda returns to his ultimate form and simply flies to the top of the mountain. Ryu follows him into the sky, and a huge climactic battle between the two ensues. They unleash a flurry of attacks, but Ryu stands his ground and slays the Archfiend once and for all. This triggers a massive explosion on the mountain's peak, but both Sonya and Ryu manage to survive. As the sun rises, Ryu reflects on his experiences and states, "The light of dawn drives the darkness once again." Ryu later visits the Black Spider Graveyard and plants the blade of the Archfiend there in Genshin's honor. Before departing, he acknowledges that the darkness isn't gone completely and he still has much to do. In the next installment, Ryu is recruited by the Japanese Self-Defense Force to combat a terrorist group led by an alchemist who goes by the title the Regent of the Mask. The Regent also seems to have a personal interest in Ryu and curses his right arm with a curse known as the Grip of Murder, which feeds on the lives that Ryu has taken, gradually consuming him. Ryu escapes a missile strike on the Prime Minister's mansion and manages to get into the JSDF's vessel, the Unagi. Here, he encounters a new ally named Mizuki, with whom he witnesses the Regent's call for a global surrender by all world governments within 7 days. They intercept a signal originating from the Rub al-Khali desert and travel to its origin. Mizuki provides Ryu with a bow that can lock onto targets, while Ayane delivers him a new gift from Hayate, the Jinran Maru sword. Ryu uses these weapons to eliminate a bunch of hired assassins and also learns that the Grip of Murder can use the dragon sword as a medium, integrating the weapon into his arm itself. This proves the fact that the curse will eventually consume Ryu completely. Ryu also faces a mirage of the Regent before battling an attack helicopter all on his own. All these encounters completely exhaust the heroic ninja, and he lies down to rest in Mizuki's arms. When he comes to his senses, he meets Kana, Mizuki's daughter, along with Cliff Higgins, her brother-in-law. The agents reveal that they're facing an enemy organization known as the Lords of Alchemy, or the LOA conglomerate. Their quest to stop these villains then carries them to Abysmo Island, where Ryu faces even more assassins while constantly resisting his curse. He discovers that the Regent has also been involved in the creation of dinosaur clones, including something known as the Gigantosaurus. As the name suggests, this beast is especially large, but Ryu manages to defeat it nonetheless. However, Mizuki is captured in the process. Ryu comes up with a scheme and surrenders for a moment, leading his enemies to lower their guard. He then kills them all, only for Mizuki to knock him unconscious with a tranquilizer. When Ryu wakes up, he finds himself in a virtual reality simulation where he's controlled by the sinister Lovelace. The simulation puts Ryu in his battles from the past, causing massive psychological damage. Despite this, Ryu escapes and battles the LOA's forces, including a chimera that was created from his own blood. He's able to rescue Kana and reunites with Mizuki. In his desperation, the Regent ends up betraying Lovelace and pushes the scientist into a prototype God's egg, causing her to mutate into a monster. Ryu defeats this altered Lovelace and escapes with his allies, but is captured by the US military. Captain Heinlein, who also reveals Kana's tragic past, reprimands him for his actions. The young girl pops out of nowhere and shows Ryu a message that reads, "Be my daddy." Since Ryu has never really thought about being a father, this idea leaves him deeply conflicted. Cliff picks up the group and then drops them off at
the Hayabusa village.
Here, Ryu retrieves the blade of the Archfiend from Genshin's grave and fights a bunch of vengeful ninjas. Meanwhile, his curse worsens and he collapses at the village gates. He wakes up in Momiji's care, who has now become the Dragon Shrine maiden. He also encounters the young cadet Sanji, who helps in lifting his spirits. They visit a hermitage orphanage nearby but are ambushed by the resurrected sorceress Obaba, proving once more that villains in this franchise just don't stay down. After defeating the sorceress, Ryu visits a temple where his father informs him that the curse has now spread throughout his body. Turns out that one of Ryu's ancestors had once suffered a similar fate and died, leaving behind just the dragon sword. He also accepts that the holy weapon has been tainted by the countless souls it has slain. Ryu resolves to continue his mission and departs for Antarctica. Amidst the snow, Ryu wages war against the LOA's forces and discovers that the organization has been creating fiends. He encounters and defeats another evil version of himself, but the curse keeps getting worse. Cliff and his grandfather, a man known as Ashtir Higgins, disclose that their true allegiance lies with LOA. Ashtir actually seems to be the chairman of the villainous organization, and Cliff seems to be the head of the R&D department. The LOA chairman shows off his mastery of sorcery by manipulating Ryu's curse. The ninja chases after them but is left stranded as they escape. Fortunately, a JSDF officer named Ishigami comes to his rescue and carries him off to a UN vessel. Ishigami then reveals that Kana has gone missing and Mizuki is already working hard on developing a rescue plan. The CIA then identifies the Black Narwhal fleet as the LOA's stronghold, but Ryu must still find a way to infiltrate the vessel. He attempts an almost impossible mid-air jump between two jets and succeeds in landing on the narwhal against all odds. Once on board the ship, Ryu wastes no time in defeating Ashtir and learns of the LOA's plans to fuse Kana with the egg of a god. He forces his way through their army and confronts the regent, only to discover that the mysterious leader is actually Kana's biological father, who had been thought long dead. Cliff, the man behind this entire scheme, had actually killed Theodore and erased his memories before using the AI in his mask to control him. Ryu grows considerably weaker due to his curse, which allows Cliff to stab him and rip the dragon sword from his body. He hurls the sword into the chamber, and soon Kana merges with the egg, transforming into the goddess. All this is too much for their vessel, the Black Narwhal, to take, and it sinks into the ocean. Stuck between life and death, Ryu finds himself lost in a vision where he's haunted by his past kills as well as Kana's condemnation. Genshin then appears and grants Ryu's awakened spirit the blade of the Archfiend. Ryu awakens in Mizuki's care and they all head to Tokyo, where the goddess is on a rampage. Ryu fights through the LOA's forces before encountering Muramasa, who informs our hero that his dragon blade can only kill pure evil. Thus, Kana might just be beyond the blade's powers. Despite this, Ryu vows to save her and proceeds with his quest. Mizuki and Ryu are ambushed by Cliff in a monster form and are only saved when Theodore appears, his memories restored. They fight their way through Shinjuku, finally getting to the goddess' stronghold. Here, Theodore betrays Ryu once again as he believes that Kana must be killed. According to Theodore, they would need the blade of the Archfiend to destroy her. However, Ryu takes on Kana's father and defeats him, but before dying, the man lifts Ryu's curse to atone for his sins. Now free of the curse, Ryu indulges in a final battle against the goddess. Their weapons clash and both mystical swords shatter upon impact. However, the purified dragon sword returns to Ryu, and with the newly awakened Eye of the Dragon, he's able to deliver a blow that's powerful enough to slay the goddess and rescue Kana. In the aftermath,
Ryu begins to leave for Hayabusa,
and Ishigami admires him for being neither a murderer nor a hero. He's actually nothing but a ninja who must continue going down the path that he's carved for himself. Classic Ninja Gaiden Timeline. Retconned continuity. The classical Ninja timeline begins with Ninja Gaiden X, where we witness the tale of the illusory tower. Here, Ryu's father challenges him to a final trial which would mark the completion of his training. Ryu climbs the tower and fights multiple enemies before getting to his father. He then faces him in battle, finally emerging victorious. In the Devil King storyline,
we see Ryu Hayabusa
receive a pre-written letter from his father, which explains that Joe has gone to a life or death duel. In case he doesn't make it back home, Ryu is instructed to travel to America and seek out a certain Walter Smith. Ryu sets off for America, where he encounters the first of the Malice Four in Jay's bar. This enemy is a deadly axe-wielding man known as the Barbarian. After defeating him, Ryu meets CIA agent Irene Liu, who gives him the demon statue and forces him to leave before more enemies arrive. Ryu then takes on another member of the Malice Four, Bomberhead, and defeats him. Still without any leads, Ryu decides to find his father's acquaintance, Dr. Walter, in the wilderness. The doctor explains that many years ago, he and Ryu's father were part of an archaeological expedition to South America. In those lands, they had discovered ancient ruins that contained a tablet describing a battle from 700 years ago. It features the deity of destruction, known as the Demon, who had entered Earth in order to wreak havoc. Ryu's ancestor, a shinobi of the dragon lineage, had fought the demon using his dragon sword. He managed to defeat the demon but couldn't destroy it. Instead, he sealed it away in two statues, the Statue of Light and the Statue of Shadow. These artifacts were then separated to prevent the demon's return. One was taken to Japan by Joe, while Walter carried the other to America. Before Walter can even finish his story, they're attacked by Basque, a member of the Malice Four who steals the statue. Ryu chases behind Basque, retrieving the statue from the demon's grasp. However, when he returns, he finds Walter mortally wounded. The CIA arrives and takes Ryu away to meet Foster, who informs him that the Devil King Jackio has returned and intends to gain ultimate power through the King's resurrection. Ryu flew down to South America, where he parachuted into the jungle and made his way to Jackio. However, he's forced to hand over the remaining statue when Jackio threatens to kill Irene. Ryu is then dropped through a cavern and must fight his way through underground caverns infested with enemies of all kinds. He reaches the ancient ruins, where he encounters Bloody Mouth, the leader of the Malice Four, who is also responsible for murdering his father. Ryu avenges his father by killing Mouth, who reveals that Joe is still alive, but also warns him that Ryu will regret meeting him. Still as determined as ever, Ryu continues pressing forward and confronts Jackio. But he then realizes that his father Joe has turned into the Masked Devil, a mind-controlled puppet without any identity of its own. Forced to fight his father, Ryu realizes that an orb is controlling him and destroys it, freeing his father once and for all. Enraged, Jackio attacks Ryu, but Joe pushes his son out of the way. In response, an enraged Ryu kills Jackio. As Joe, Ryu, and Irene make their escape, Ryu's father urges him to retrieve the statues, but it's far too late, and the lunar eclipse is already upon them. Ryu takes up the dragon sword and battles the demon in an intense struggle. The team is victorious, but the ruins collapse, and Joe tells Ryu that his fate is tied to this place. He orders his son to take Irene and leave. With no more time to save his father, Ryu escapes and finds himself as the last living member of the dragon lineage. Outside, Foster commands Irene to kill Ryu, but she refuses. The two watch the sunrise and contemplate their loss, but Ryu knows that he must move on in order to fulfill his purpose as the Dragon Ninja. The Ancient Ship of Doom is a minor storyline that involves Ryu's doppelganger assassinating Irene. In his quest to clear his name, Ryu discovers that Irene is still alive and that the doppelgangers were actually bionoids sent by Irene's old boss, Foster. In the next storyline, known as the Dark Sword of Chaos, we find Ryu traversing the rooftops of New York, battling a variety of demonic forces. He first defeats the Viking spirit Dando, only to find another character, Robert T. Sturgeon, emerging from the shadows. He informs Ryu that Irene has been killed and taken to the Tower of Laja. Ryu boards a freight train and fights countless waves of enemies on his way to the countryside. He slays Baron Spider in the mountains and finally manages to reach the tower to confront Ashtir, who holds Irene hostage. He first faces Funky Dynamite, who's easily defeated, but Ashtir manages to disappear into the demon world with Irene. Ryu and Robert enter the realm to take on their enemy, but he manages to wound Irene fatally before being slain. Before getting out of there, Ryu urges Robert to escape Irene as he senses that something is amiss. Jackio takes advantage of this and abducts Irene once more. Ryu reaches the altar and defeats Jackio, but Jackio's blood manages to revive the demon of destruction, draining Irene's life. Ryu slays the demon, and the dragon sword restores Irene, leaving us with something close to a happy ending.
Ryu Hayabusa in Dead or Alive Tournaments and Battles.
The Dead or Alive Tournament. When Ryu learns that Kasumi has fled from her clan in order to seek revenge for her brother Hayate, he follows her in order to keep his promise of protecting her. His quest leads him to the Dead or Alive tournament, where he soon begins to uncover dark secrets. When Kasumi kills her uncle Raido, she's captured by the Doatech for experimentation. This marks the beginning of the Alpha projects. Things escalate even further when Hayate's body mysteriously vanishes. The Tengu of Destruction. A supernatural entity known as the Goya Bankotsu Bo emerges from the Tengu realm after murdering its leader. It enters the human world and wreaks havoc across the globe, altering weather patterns and plunging human civilization into disaster. The Doatech sees this opportunity to use him as their top fighter. In order to stay true to his dragon lineage, Ryu must now hunt the Tengu, find Kasumi, and prevent her from facing such a powerful foe. Along the way, he fights Hayate, who has now adopted the name Ain. Eventually, Ryu succeeds in restoring his old comrade's memories. At the tournament's peak, he defeats the otherworldly monster, stopping the destruction of the world. Project Omega. Doatech abducts Genra in order to continue their twisted experiments, and the leader of the Heijin Mon sect uses his abilities to transform Genra into a deadly superhuman. Ryo vows to stop the villains, but Hayate keeps him from interfering as it's a Mugen Tenshin matter. Ryu accepts this decision and steps aside, causing Ayane to take on the role of eliminating her father. After the battle, Ryu receives a message that foreshadows their violent future. Assault on Doatek. Doatek's twisted experiments cause Hayate to declare war on the entire organization. Ryu joins the Mugen/Tenshin ninja in an assault on the organization. During the tournament, he comes to Ayane's aid when she finds herself facing the assassin Christie. This gives her the opportunity to support Hayate. Soon, ninjas emerge from the ground and Ryu has to take to the rooftops. He succeeds in eliminating a Doatek executive with his Ninpo strikes. However, the battle is far from over. Ryu takes to the skies in order to indulge in an intense aerial battle, takes down 3 fighter jets while still in freefall. I mean, there's hardly anything this guy can't do, even while in freefall. Legacy of the Dragon Ninja. Ninja Gaiden is a franchise that spans decades, but it's been a while since we saw a new addition to the lore. Well, Xbox Game Studios has revealed that a new installment is just around the corner, and it'll feature a completely new protagonist, Yakumo. Executives from the company have stated that players should prepare to find themselves in a gruesomely transformed Tokyo, with the Dark Dragon finally making its return. In a world of chaos, Yakumo will have to fight not just his foes, but even the greatest ninja of all time,
the real Hayabusa
himself. A new trailer showcases stylish new mechanics like traversal via wires and rails. Despite this, adversity will remain a key concept of the new game, with all creative decisions pushing Yakumo to new extremes. Marvelous verdict!
The real Hayabusa
has had a long and arduous life. He is the kind of guy who just doesn't give up. Though the new announcements make it seem like he's going to be an antagonist in Ninja Gaiden 4, we're sure that he'll wake up to reality sooner or later in order to return to his heroic ways. Unfortunately, that's it for this one, but which of the Ninja Gaiden installments is your favorite? What was your favorite boss fight? What was your favorite moment? Let us know in the comments down below. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay up to date with all of our marvelous content. It's time for farewell, but don't worry, because we'll catch you in the next one pretty soon. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.